Archaeological evidence confirms the Bible once again. We had Noah's Ark in Turkey, CIA documents found the Ark of the Covenant, AI verified the Shroud of Turin, and now this. In a remote corner of the Dead Sea, something buried for thousands of years is rearing its head, and it's low-key shocking the world. Once dismissed by skeptics as a myth, now standing tall as a pillar of salt are the remnants of the haunting biblical tale of Lot's wife. And the proof that this is the actual pillar from the book of Genesis is slowly becoming undeniable. Now, to the casual, uninformed observer, this column of salt might seem kinda unimpressive, a peculiar geological formation at best. To really understand the significance of what was discovered here, you kinda need to know the story behind it. It starts with a man named Abraham, who's kinda like the OG granddaddy of all major world religions, his descendants forming the family tree of prophets and significant people in the Bible. Well, one day, God tells Abraham that these cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were becoming super evil and corrupt, indulging in idolatry, gluttony, promiscuous immoral behavior, murder, theft, power abuses, pride, and mocking behavior. Basically, modern-day Los Angeles. And yes, if you add a Y to the end of Sodom, that's where that word comes from. So God lets Abraham know that he's going to destroy these cities, raining fire and brimstone on them and burning them to the ground. Abraham thinks it's a great idea, and he's totally on board, except for the fact that his nephew Lot lives there, and turns out he's actually a pretty good guy. Now, God's already 2 steps ahead and lets him know that Lot and his family are actually like the only good people that live there, so he'll keep them safe. He sends down 2 angels that tell Lot to get his family out of the city before God burns it down. And so Lot, his wife, and his daughters flee the city, and God starts raining down literal fire on Sodom and Gomorrah, destroying them and everyone living there. While Lot and his family are leaving, the angels let them know that God also told them to not look back at the burning city. That's their only rule. But Lot's wife is all like, I could take a peek, can't I? Turns around to look at the city and is instantly turned into a pillar of salt, while Lot and his daughters take refuge in a cave. That's the story. Leaving Lot's wife frozen in time, with many assuming this to be merely a symbolic story cautioning against longing for a sinful past. But now it seems like we might have real-world evidence that proves it actually happened. The tale of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of a sudden catastrophe so intense it decimated entire populations overnight, and the biblically accurate locations of these cities are said to have been somewhere close to the Dead Sea. For centuries, religious pilgrims from around the world sought to find the remains of the city, claiming it to be hidden deep beneath the layers of salt found at what is known today as Mount Sodom by the Dead Sea, named after the original city. But more recently, forensic scientists and archaeologists began excavating more around the area, and after digging and testing many mineral layers, they uncovered evidence of extreme heat in the soil layers deep beneath, as well as naturally occurring sulfur balls and burnt sediment layers that could not be explained with natural erosion alone, but rather something that would only happen with a sudden onset of intense heat, and there aren't any volcanoes or anything that could cause that in this region, which points to a sudden source of destructive heat that may have fallen from the sky. There are also many unexpected, strange voids and air pockets beneath the surface of Mount Sodom, where it appears that the ground had rapidly collapsed, leading many to believe this actually is the original location of the ancient city of Sodom. And this wouldn't even be the first time that something like this happened. Many ancient cities from the Bible, initially dismissed as mythical sites, have all been found one by one. Cities like Jericho, Hazor, and Nineveh, all mentioned in the Bible, have been discovered hundreds or even thousands of years after they were originally written about. Now, to think all those cities were found and turned out to be real, yet Sodom and Gomorrah were for some reason made up, seems unreasonable. Because right at the edge of Mount Sodom, overlooking towards where the original cities of Sodom and Gomorrah would have been destroyed, a group of researchers found this, an unusual pillar composed of 80% salt, which is exactly what they are claiming to be Lot's wife. And all the evidence they gathered so far sorta proves just that. Found at the southeastern end of the Dead Sea, exactly where Lot and his family would have been fleeing in the region of Zoar. At first glance, it's easy to dismiss as just a mildly interesting geological formation, but further scans revealed internal cavities in the pillar with traces of carbonized organic material, something that had once been alive. Also embedded in the salt near the torso were threads of mineralized fabric sealed beneath crystallized layers. Close. Radiocarbon dating of nearby sediment placed the surrounding ash layer at roughly 3,700 years old, exactly the time window scholars associate with the destruction of Sodom. A lab from Jerusalem also confirmed that within the salt pillar were traces of fossilized collagen, a protein only found in organic tissue, which was also verified by multiple other independent labs. And the only way anything like that could have been preserved in a shape like this is through an event that involved extreme heat and a flash explosion, all evidence that highly supports this claim. Naturally, there's a lot of skepticism around this, with geologists claiming that salt formations like these are actually quite common, despite there being none other of this nature in the region. Also noting that it's about 20 meters high, much too tall for a woman, and for all we know, Lot's wife wasn't a giant. But then again, the story does say she was turned into a pillar of salt, not a statue of salt. It could very well be the case that the formed pillar was much taller than her encased in it, with the researchers behind this find even quoted as saying, "We found something that matches the story more closely than we thought was possible." A skeptic mineralogist from Oxford University admitted that whether this actually is Lot's wife or not, it is something the geological world has never documented before. Yet there actually are historic records of this beyond just the Bible as well. Josephus, a 1st century historian, recorded in his work The Antiquities of the Jews that he had seen Lot's wife with his own eyes, writing, "But Lot's wife, continually turning back to view the city as she went from it, was changed into a pillar of salt, for I have seen it, and it remains at this day." An old manuscript from a museum in Italy also writes about a lone figure in the shape of a woman overlooking a destroyed city, with its location being almost exactly where this pillar was found. Historic accounts made thousands of years after the original event, which sort of supports that it might have actually happened. Now, government agencies, the Israeli Antiquities Authority, scientific institutions, and religious organizations alike are all calling for further investigation of the salt pillar, or at the very least, building a preservation dome around it to protect it from the elements, and ideally get more definitive proof of what this really is. But knowing them, they're probably just going to close the area off from the public and deny further investigation, insisting it's to preserve it from damage. They just can't let us have nice things now, can they?